Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's again so with Ideal. On today's tutorial, I'm sharing with you guys how I made this basic top. If that is what you're here for, make sure you stay to the end. Let's get started. So I've gone ahead to mark my starting line, which is going to be my shoulder. And from the center front, I'm going to mark 2.5 for my neck width because this is stretchy fabric. I want to use 2.5. Okay, so I'll go ahead to mark my shoulder measurement as well. Now, if your fabric is very stretchy, you're most likely going to even minus more from yours. But mine is not so stretchy, so but for the shoulder and the neck, you should use that regardless of how stretchy it is. Then for the neck depth for the back, I'll be working with 1 inch. I marked 1.5 initially, but I changed it to 1 inch. Then for the neck width, sorry, for the neck depth for the front, depending on how low or how high you want it to be. Okay, so for this I wanted it to be a little bit open, so you can use up to like 6 inches or 7. I used about 4.5 or 5 and I later increased it. Okay, so but if you want it to be more of like high neck, you can do 3.5 to 4. Even the 4.5 is still going to give you a high neck. Okay, so for that will be for the front and the back neckline and neck width. Now from the shoulder, I'm going to come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope, and I'll connect it to the neck um, tip to create our shoulder slant as you're seeing. Then the next thing we are going to be doing is to create our armhole line, and to do that, divide your bust by 6 plus 1.5, and then I'm going to mark that. If your fabric is very stretchy, I would say regardless, just do this. We can work on that later. Just go ahead and divide the bust by 6 plus 1.5, and that's what I marked. I'll go ahead to indicate my shoulder measurement there for us to have a straight line, and I will go ahead and connect to the shoulder line, and that's going to give us our armhole line before we get our armhole curve. Okay, now after doing that, I will also go ahead and extend the other side, which is going to be our chest line, and that is what we have. Then the next thing I'm going to be doing is to impute my bust circumference divided by 4. Now because this is a stretchy fabric, you do not want to but before then, sorry, I will go ahead and create my armhole curve, which is to divide the armhole line by 2, go in by half an inch and create the curve. Now, as I was saying, for the bust circumference, you do not want to use your actual bust weight. So if you're like bust 35, or let's say bust 38, and your fabric is very stretchy, if it is very stretchy on both sides, okay, I would say you should minus about 8 inches to 10 inches depending on how stretchy it is. But for me, mine is not so stretchy. It is stretchy but not so stretchy. It's not like a lycra stretchy. Okay, you can't compare that to a lycra stretchiness. So for me, I'm going to be minusing 3 inches. The other peach one I made, I minused about 5 inches, and you can see that one is very tight compared to this navy blue, and it's a bit hard to wear. But for this one, you can do it, depends on how tight you want it and how um stretchy your fabric is. So if your fabric is not so stretchy, you can minus 3 inches. If it is very stretchy, you can minus from 5 inches up to even 10 inches depending on how stretchy it is. Please emphasis on how stretchy it is. And then I'll go ahead and connect all those together. Now the next thing I'll be doing is to get my shoulder to waistline, which is 17 inches, and I'm going to mark that. If you want yours to be like a crop top, you can go ahead and mark that. For me, I don't want it to be a crop top, I want it to be longer. So after marking this, I'll connect that together, and I'll also mark out my top length as well. So it depends on what you want. If you want a crop top, you can make that, and if you also want it longer, you can also go ahead and do that. So I labeled that my waistline, and I also go ahead and measure from the shoulder to the top length, like I said earlier, and I think I'm working with about 23 to 24 inches, and that includes folding allowance for the hem. So I did 24 inches, 23 for the actual length, and 1 inch for folding. And I'll go ahead and also connect my line, and then I'll cut off the other part which will not be working with, so we'll focus on the one we're working with. Okay, so after cutting that, I'll go ahead to create or to cover out the neckline for the front and the back. As you can see, I would advise you use your ruler. If you don't have, you can see use your free hand. Okay, but for a better finishing, please use a ruler. Now after remember we've marked the bust circumference, so we're going to be marking the waist the same way we minus 3 inches from the bust. That's what we're going to also do for the waist. So my waist is 32 minus 3 will be giving me 29 inches, and 29 divided by 4 is about 7.25. So I'm going to be marking that. Remember, we're not adding allowance to this, okay? So this is what you're going to do. But if your fabric is very stretchy, please minus about 5 inches and still don't add any allowance. So that includes the allowance. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to mark that, and then on the top length you can go ahead and measure around where your top stops. You can measure around that and then get the circumference around there. Okay, so for me I'll be working with 8 inches for the top length, and I'll go ahead and mark that. And after marking that, I will also connect together. I'll connect all the joints, all the points together, and yeah. So after doing that, this is what we have. I'll go ahead and cut out this pattern. Now I'm gonna head to cut it out. I cut the back first, so we're going to cut our fabric for the back first before we cut the neckline and then cut for the front. So this is the fabric I'll be working with. I'm showing you guys it's like two-phase fabric, and you can see that mine is stretchy. It is thick, it is very thick, and it is stretchy but not so stretchy. The other side is not really stretchy, but the part I'll be working with is the stretchiest part. So the part that is more stretchy is where you're going to be using as the side to side. Okay, so I'm going ahead to cut the back, as you can see, and then I trimmed out the pattern neck for the front, and I also used it to cut the front neckline. I ended up changing this neckline because I found out that it was high, because I already made one that was high, so I didn't want like two tops that are the same. I just wanted one neckline to be a little bit low. So what we are going to be doing next is to go ahead and join the shoulders. I'll join the shoulders for the two sides of it, and then I'll also close the side by 0.5 inch. Depends on you. If yours is very stretchy, you can maybe close it by 1 inch, but for me I'm going to be closing by 0.5. And after joining, this is what we have. Now the next thing we are going to be doing is to get the circumference of our armhole. So I'm going to be measuring what I have on the armhole round, and then we are going to cut the sleeve. So I'll go ahead and measure. You can decide to open it and measure around, or you can still decide to just measure it like this. Okay, because the front and the back armhole was the same, so no need. So I'm going ahead to measure, and what I have is about 8.5. Then we're going to mark that. We're going to write that down so we don't forget. So 8.5 is for the armhole, and then I also go ahead and measure the neckline, so we can cut all of this together at once. Now we're going to fold the armhole like so and measure. Please, you can decide to measure each round for a better result, but for me my fabric is stable enough, so I'll just fold it like so, and then I'll measure gently, and I'll get what I have for the circumference of the neck, and I think I have about 9.25. So that 9.25 times 2, all right, because we only measured one side, so you have to times it by 2, which is going to be like the round. The same thing with the armhole. Okay, so I'm indicating that this is the neckline, and I'm going to times it by 2. All right, so that's what we have now. So I'm going to bring out my fabric for the sleeve, and we are going to cut the sleeve. Now I have my fabrics on fold, so this is a fold of 2, and the length I'll be working with for the sleeve is 6 inches plus 1 inch for the folding. That will be 7 inches. So you want it very short. If you want yours to be longer, just go ahead and do your normal sleeve cutting. There is no much big deal here. Okay, that depends. If your fabric is very stretchy, then you should minus some amount, but for this there's nothing much to do. I'll go ahead and cut that off, and after doing that I'll determine my cap height. I'll be working with about 5. You can use 4 to 5 inches, so I think I use about 4.5. Then after doing that, remember what we measured for our sleeve armhole is 8.5, so that means we want this part to be 8.5. So I'm just going to like do a little freehand, so there is no rule for this. Just go ahead and curve your armhole the way you like it. I didn't want it to be shallow, I want it to look a little bit deep, so that when you wear it, it's going to sit properly. And then after curving this out, you're going to measure. Okay, you're going to measure to be sure that it's up to the 8.5 or is even more. Now normally if you want to add some allowance, maybe you don't want your sleeve to be tight, you can go ahead and add sewing allowance like after marking out the actual width for your what's it called, for your armhole, like I'm doing, you're going to add another 1 inch or half inch. So this is what I have. This is supposed to be my actual armhole line. Now I'm going to add the 1 inch. That is for people that want to add it, because I won't be making use of this. And then at the end of the sleeve, you're also going to measure what your sleeve round is. Mine is 12, and I only minus, I'm not really minus anything, but when I'm sewing, I'm only going to minus half an inch from my sleeve, because you don't want it tight, you still want it to look okay or comfortable. So after marking this, I'll go ahead and cut it. So this is for people that would want maybe their sleeve to sit well, but for me, I don't like that. So I think I mixed this clip. I don't like it. I always like to minus, so I eventually removed that 1 inch, and I wanted it in a way that our sleeve is smaller, so that by the time we are sewing into the armhole on the clothes, it's going to grab the clothes, or the armhole on the dress, on the top, sorry. So that is what I mean. Now we're going to go ahead and fold the sleeve into two, then top stitch again. I'll show you guys when I've done that. Now this is what I'm talking about. After sewing the first stitch, you're going to top stitch again to give it a finish, a nice finishing that's like a ready-made wear. As you can see, it's looking nice. So that's the trick for you to, you know, give it that nice finishing. I did the first stitch and then I top stitched the other one. I also closed the side of this sleeve by 1 inch. So remember that I removed that 1 inch we added initially, and then I sew again by 1 inch. That means I removed about 1 inch from the actual 8.5. So what I have here now is about 7.5, right? So now that means the sleeve is now smaller than the armhole for this top, and that is what we wanted. All right, I want it in a way that it can grab the dress armhole, because if you make it exactly the same, it might end up becoming too big, and you don't want anything, you know, this is supposed to be a fitted basic top, and you don't want some parts looking big or looking saggy. Okay, so we're going to match up the shoulder, and then I'll match up the armhole to the side of the top, and this is what we have now. After matching them up, you're going to sew. As you're sewing, you're going to stretch out, because once you do this, you will notice that it is not equal. The sleeve is smaller than the armhole. All right, so you're going to sew and make sure it fits in. If you can go ahead and use your pins to hold them down before you sew, but for me, I know what I'm doing, so I'll just go ahead and sew and stretch out, make sure that everything I sew it around. I'll do the same thing for the other side, and you can see what the armhole looks like already, and it is coming together. All right, so this is what we have so far. You can see how it came out, and because of the way I cut the armhole, you can see how it sits properly on the, so the way I cut the sleeve, you can see how it sits properly on the armhole. And now the next we are going to be working on is the neckline. Like I said earlier, this neckline turned out to be smaller for me. It's not like it was small, but I didn't want a high neck line. Okay, so I eventually had to turn it, but this procedure is still the same way I used in getting the current one. So what you're going to do is to fold this neckline into two. You're not folding it equally, you're going to shift it a little bit so the shoulders are not matching. And why you're doing this is so that your neckline, when you're piping it, is going to relax very well. So I'm going to notch those parts, and this is what you should be having by the time you notch that and you folded it like that. Now for my piping, I also went ahead to minus 3 inches from my what's it called, my neck round. I minus 3 inches from it, and I sew. I don't know if I think I misplaced that clip, but I minus about 3 inches from that from the neckline for the band. For me to get the band, I minus 3 inches, and then that the width of this band is about 2 inches. Okay, so what you're going to do is to face the right side of the band to the wrong side of the shirt or the polo, because you want the turning to be facing the right side. Okay, so you're going to be matching the first point to the back, and then the second point to the front. All right, so we're going to match them up, and remember, this is shorter, it is smaller than the neckline, so you will need to stretch it out when you're sewing it. All right, so it's always advisable to use a more stretchy fabric for this piping, but we are going to be working with what we have, which is using the exact fabric for it. You just have to work with the part that is very stretchy, and then after sewing that round, you can see what we have. You would even see that it's not even showing that the band was smaller than the neckline. That's if you do it well. So the next thing you're going to do is to flip it over and finish up the piping. Do it round, so it's all round. And yes, that will be for that. And we're also going to go ahead and fold the hemline. After doing that, we're also going to top stitch again like we did for the sleeve. And this is what we have so far. You can see how neat this came out. Yes, thank you so much for joining, and if you enjoyed this video, do not forget to like, drop a comment in the comment section, and subscribe to the channel. Always stay tuned for more videos. See you guys in the next tutorial. Bye.